one of the things that we've spoken about is that something needs to break, right? In order for a big change, there's something needs to break. And one of the things that I'm looking at is like, cool, Australia is fundamentally different to other first world countries, which is why you referenced Canada, US, and NZ and stuff, because obviously that's what we're close with, but property is fundamentally different against it. If, in your opinion, if something was to break somewhere in the world, does that impact Australia? Or do we need to have something break for us? So to use an example, in the US, the global financial crisis, like the Lehman Brothers and what was it, Bear Stearns, kind of collapsed. And then it was like, whoa, all right, now something can change. And then it changed and started repairing itself and doing all those kind of things. Can that happen where something else happens elsewhere, but we get the benefit from it? Or does something have to break in Australia, in your view?
Yeah, so I love this as a question. I would suggest that if something big breaks anywhere in the world, it affects the whole rest of the world because we're such a connected world now. And you would just have to look at the example of like if China shuts down and we can't get goods made, how much it impacts our economy.
You've seen that before.
Yeah, like we've had experiences of that. We've seen that. So does and then before using 2008 is the housing bubble popped there, triggered a massive event all across the world that impacted several other countries differently. So they're all impacted in different ways. Now, could New Zealand be the thing to break that then sends warning to the rest of the world and changes things? Absolutely. That might be the thing. And like New Zealand, as a country in GDP was probably about the size of Cairns.
Yeah.
So it's like, I think the significance of it matters here. Bringing this back to why I think this is something business owners should pay attention to, or at least have some awareness to, is let me play through a couple of hypotheticals, noting I have no idea what's going to happen, right? This is crystal balling at its best.
Yep.
If they keep raising interest rates significantly and it works, do you think that like Robbie Lowe and others aren't going to sit there and go, look, we'll do that? Because they're all desperate to achieve the same result?
So they totally will. You know
yeah. So if this works, it wouldn't surprise me that if Australia started getting more aggressive with rates to get the same result.
In my mind, all I keep thinking about is like we're the cherry picker in the goal square, and all these other countries are like lobbing bobs from outside the 50, to use an AFL terminology. And I'm like, we're sitting there at like 3.35, just going, all right, go. And then when they drop it, and we just like grab it, just like kick it over the goal. I was like, thanks, guys. Appreciate you.
Cheers.
So thanks. Do you see, so here's my other thought process, and I'll stack on my view. Do you see Australia sort of taking a little bit of a backseat going, all right, let's see what the rest of the world does? Or do you think that in our context of our own economy, we're actually going quite aggressive, where we're like, oh, yeah, cool, based on everything that we've got, we're actually doing the right thing? Or do you think it's like, let's see where everyone else lands and we'll just keep sort of sitting behind them because maybe something will break for them?
Yeah, all right. So let's paint it. This is, again, pure speculation. So what do we know about Australia is that we've got very strong balance sheets and a lot of equity in homes.
Yes.
All right. So if you look at that, Australia is in a position where it can be more patient because we do have more cash set on the sides.
Everything. Yep.
All right. So if I am, again, steel manning, this seems to be the topic of the day.
I'm fine with it.
If I was, Dr. Lou, and I'm sitting there and going, do you know what? Our bank accounts are pretty healthy here. We've got good buffers. Let's just sit back a little bit and see what everyone else does. And then based on what's working and not working, we can make our own accord from here.
Totally.
I would do that. I really would do that because I think that it gives you the greatest opportunity to make the best decision. And there's that saying, it's like, pioneering doesn't pay. The guy who runs first is the one that gets killed in war.
Totally. Totally. But I think that it softens the landing as well. Because potentially. But we're steel manning everything now. If you're sitting there going, well, it's not as bad for us as it is for other countries, we're not forced to go as hard. It also means that when this thing turns and changes, maybe it's going to be a softer landing for us based on us just not going as firm as us. And
potentially they don't have to do as much.
Totally. And so then I look at this and I kind of concur with something that you mentioned where I look at this and I'm like, there's just so much uncertainty kicking around, not just Australia, but the world, where you've got countries trying to break things, like you've got markets going up and down and left and right and everything. You got lawmakers coming out with stimulus and changing laws to try and increase revenue and everything. I'm just like, this is just an uncertain time where I'm going, all right, I just got to make sure that from business, I'm stable. From the income that I'm making outside of like investments and stuff, like I've got a good emergency fund. I personally am just not going to be exposed to any of this risk, no matter what happens. I'm just making sure I stack the deck for me personally in my favor, so that whilst all these things figure themselves out, whether it's 3 months, 6 months, 2 years, 5 years, whatever, I'm just going to be able to weather the storm and come out the other side, looking at opportunities, going, where to next?
All right. You ready for it?
I'm always ready.
So you've been buying property, Grant.
I have.
Do you know what that gets me to want to do?
Buy property.
Yeah, I get a bit bullish. Not going to lie. I really do.
Sorry.
What am I meant to do? Sit here on the sidelines, watch you buying property and getting some really good results as well, I will mention. It's like, the FOMO.
I'm putting it out. Dude, every quarterback needs a water boy. Just saying.
Yeah, that hurts me. Yeah, but that doesn't make it. All right, so let's just look at that and unpack it a little bit. Grant buying property is not a good investment thesis.
No.
All right, it's like that's a FOMO at its best.
Yes.
But it's interesting that I look at my own behavior across the last couple of months and I've sit there and watched my psychology build into, they're not going to do any more rate rises. It's going to start slowing down. Grant started buying property. And before you know it, I'm willing to compromise on my risk.
Mm-hmm.
Where if you go back to maybe 6 months, 12 months before that, I'm like, we don't know how high rates are going to go. You need to make sure that you are prepared to weather a storm.
Yep.
So I had a psychological shift myself. Now, what's occurred here, and I think we've got to be cautious of, and this really lays into what you're saying, is that we've just received a signal that in plain sight that New Zealand is still going hard on raising rates. And you know what? If that works, it could appear here.
Yep.
Now, and even I think at the last Fed meeting, they're talking higher for longer is the framing they're using. Higher rates and we're going to hold them up for longer is what they're talking about. And even our own Reserve Bank is saying that they're going to raise rates. I have this information, and yet because of seeing things in my own network, is like I'm looking at it and going, can't trust them. Grant's buying property. I'm getting bullish here. I was on a webinar the other night. They're saying this is going to boom. I'm on, and it's like the compromise on risk. Now, making this even more interesting is that if you keep your buffers and health and reserves in good check and keep your risk in check at the moment, if a storm never comes, you're fine.
Yep.
If you compromise on that and a storm does come, you may not be fine. So it's very easy to get carried away and excited by these emotional things. And that could be the very thing that has people come undone. So again, we're not allowed to give advice on these topics, but I will say that I had a bit of a gut check and I'm making sure that I look after my own risk measures. And again, I have rules. I don't change them month on month. Very much looked at this and making sure that I stay within check. I still might buy a property this year or two. But the point being is I'm not compromising risk to do so because there is still so much uncertainty around there.
Totally.
There's heaps of uncertainty out there. And for the business owners that are considering potentially risky moves, is putting some risk measure in place is still appropriate.
Totally. And the way that I've thought about it and approached it, especially in this such an uncertain time, because it's like, how do I buy it? Transparently, this has challenged me a lot. How do I sit there and say, I think maybe buying more property makes logical sense when rates are rising? You've got some of the greatest investors out of the States going, no, everyone's fucked. And I'm like, what do I know in comparison to them?
Let's hold up on that point, right? Because you got these things here. It's like, you want to be greedy when others are fearful, right?
Totally.
Be contrarian, Grant. What a great time to be contrarian. Look at all this contrarian news. You get to go over it. But rates are also actually rising, right? There is risk here.
And smart people are like, yeah, this is recession. Like, we're all doomed. Like,
so how do you handle that?
Just complete blackout of everything. Like, this podcast is the worst thing I do every week. I'm like, oh my gosh. No, so you know what's funny? The way that I approached it was I'm like, cool. Let's say that it drops a bit. Let's say I buy property and it drops 10, 20, 30%. That's fine. I'm in for the long term and I can weather the storm and I'm okay with it. And that is a better outcome than me just sitting cash in a bank account, in my opinion, based on my situation. And so the way that I thought about it was like going into the casino with like the $100 that you're fine with. You have disconnected from this $100. And if it does not need to return anything, you can walk out with nothing and you're still happy with the outcome. Because you're like, cool, that was fun. That was enjoyable. And I looked at this and I said, hey, wherever this thing lands, I'm completely fine with the outcome and it will not impact me financially to the point where I think it may or may not bottom out / may or may not grow. Right. And so that was for me going, this is a better use of my cash than sitting in the bank accounts and doing what it's currently doing. And that was where basically my thesis came from. Like, that was it.
I think we've got to be reminded to zoom out as well, right? It's like when we're talking about risks here, neither of us are looking at it going, oh, let's sell everything. This is a danger time. It's more about, I want to ensure I survive short-term turbulence for long-term results. That's the aim of the game here, because if you get forced into a sell position, like that's when damage is done in a portfolio.
Yeah,
potentially.
If I'm not forced, then and that's exactly what I'm playing it at the moment.
Completely, I love that.
Hey, fellow business owner, if this topic and value-packed short video has resonated with you at all, and you want to dive deeper into creating wealth inside and outside your business, check out the full episode by clicking the link on your screen or in the description right now.